This is Gareth Southgate, and this is the Three Lions podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Three Lions podcast. My name is Russell Osborne and this is an independent England football supporters podcast. We're still here, still in the World Cup finals. And with regards to England, it's all gone the way pretty much everyone expected it to. Win the group, beat whoever finished second in Group A, and then play France in the quarter-finals. And here we are, a date with the French on Saturday the 10th of December at 7 p.m. Coming up on this episode, I'll be chatting with Dom Smith from englandfootball.org about the Senegal match, and also to Hugo Malim, England fan but French resident, who has been keeping an eye on Les Bleus. But before we do that, some more of my observations about the World Cup since we last spoke in a moment. But don't forget, the Three Lions podcast, some recent episodes. I spoke with a couple of England fans who were out in Qatar, but also spending time predominantly in like the UAE. Glyn Davis and Howard Taylor, both England fans. That episode is available at your podcast provider of choice or threelionspodcast.com. Go and have a listen to that. Now, as I say, my observations on the World Cup since we last spoke. Some of these are a little bit dated, but what with these episodes not being so frequent, I mean, blimey, I can't imagine what it's like having to produce daily content. I tip my hat to anyone that does that, especially in a tournament, a World Cup or a European Championships environment. Yeah, good work. But no team has won all three of their group games, and this has been for the first time since 1994 in the American World Cup. And from what I've seen, no team has really blown me away. Every team seems to have had a little stumble in some way, shape or form, especially when they've been rotating squads for final group games when they know they're already through. But it's certainly been a tournament for those not so familiar nations to show that they are up and coming and can play with the best from Europe and South America. And I'm thinking Senegal, the States, Australia, South Korea, Japan, Morocco. I mean, be honest, did you see all of those making it through their respective groups? No, I certainly didn't. But I guess the biggest topic of conversation has been the Japan, Spain, Germany, did the ball go over the line story. I know it seems ages ago now, doesn't it? In fact, it's going to go down as one of the most controversial World Cup moments ever. I mean, it's up there with the World Cup final of 66, the Hand of God 86, England, Germany 2010. It's nice not to be the victim this time, isn't it? Obviously, there are other moments too. Suarez in 2010, that was a controversial moment, wasn't it? I heard someone on the radio compare this situation to the viral internet conversation of 2015, where people were discussing the colour of a dress, whether it was white and gold or black and blue. That dress, I know, I'm going off on a tangent here, but it's got its own Wikipedia page, that. But people, just like they were with that dress thing, they were split as to whether that ball had crossed the line or it hadn't. I had a look at it once and say one thing, then I'd look at it again and contradict myself. But I have to say, I think the correct decision was made in the end, but it'll be debated for years to come. And that phrase, curvature of the ball, it's awful. So out went Germany, much to the amusement of a lot of Englishmen who remembered when the ball really did cross the line. Belgium. I didn't think this would be their year. I didn't, however, think they'd crash at the first hurdle. However, someone I know did. Aidan Smith, who regularly joins me here on the pod and did so for the Iran review, he tweeted on the 6th of June that they would be knocked out in the group stage of the World Cup. Good work, Aidan. Of course, no doubt we will chat with him again sometime soon. I'd like to think he put a couple of quid on that. Out went Uruguay in a dramatic match with Ghana, winning 2-0, but were knocked out by South Korea, who in the other game scored in the last minute against Portugal to take that spot by virtue of goal difference. And the group stages of this World Cup have thrown up all sorts of surprises, and that's what's made it exciting and kept us on the edge of our seats. Yet despite this, FIFA have made the decision to change the format in 2026, the next World Cup, where instead of groups of 4, it will be 16 groups of 3 teams, which if you're quick at your maths and better than me, you'll know that it's going to be 48 teams, as opposed to the current 32, of which the top 2 will progress through to a last 32 knockout. FIFA clearly trying to fix something that isn't broken. So who is out and who remains? Let's start with those who have taken their flights home. From Group A, it was Ecuador and Qatar. Although obviously Qatar haven't flown home. Let's be honest though, it was a given, wasn't it? They lost all 3 of their matches. Ecuador, I must admit, I thought may have made it through. Group B, Iran finished 3rd and Wales 4th. I must admit, I raised a few eyebrows when I said Iran would finish 2nd. They didn't do too badly, though, from what I saw of them. Obviously, we destroyed them in the first game, and that probably put them out of their stride. Wales just looked tired. Perhaps it was down to the fact that they didn't have the same amount of time and preparation that they may have had it have been a summer tournament. Group C, Mexico and Saudi Arabia. Mexico missed out goal difference to Poland. Shame, as they were tipped by a few to go far. And Saudi Arabia, even when they beat Argentina, I thought to myself, they've peaked too early. They're going to have to replicate it again against Poland and Mexico. And they simply couldn't do it. Group D, Tunisia and Denmark. With so many games on throughout the tournament group stages, you can't see them all. And Tunisia were one of the teams that I don't think I saw at all. But Denmark finishing 4th was perhaps one of the surprises of the tournament. Group E, despite England's group being the one with all the highest FIFA ranked teams, if you go by that, this Group E was the one I thought would be the toughest. You can never put Germany down as leaving early. Certainly not for the 2nd tournament in a row. Costa Rica finished bottom of that one. Group F, as we've already mentioned about Belgium, they finished 3rd with Canada coming last. No doubt they'll be disappointed, but it could have been oh so different had they have scored that early penalty against Belgium in the first game. Group G, Cameroon and Serbia left us. Cameroon doing so after beating Brazil in their last group game. What a way to go. And Serbia, well, they'll be disappointed. Again, like Denmark, expected to go a little further than they actually did. And Group H, Luis Suarez seen crying on the bench, unable to do anything to help his team, will go down in his own World Cup history memories, along with handling the ball in 2010 and biting Chiellini in 2014. My heart bled. Uruguay left the tournament as South Korea scored that last-minute goal. Ghana would join them on the first plane out of Doha. So that leaves us with the round of 16. Now, at the time of recording this, the only result I don't know is the one between Portugal and Switzerland. But we started off with the Netherlands beating the United States 3-1. Argentina then beat Australia 2-1. That was a match where I think Gary Lineker said that there were 7 nations in the world that all began with an A and ended with an A. I think I spent all of half time trying to work out what those were. Got there in the end. France, of course, beat Poland 3-1. We beat Senegal 3-0, and we will talk about that with Dom Smith in a couple of moments' time. Japan drew with Croatia 1-1. Then Croatia, with the first penalty shootout of the tournament, won that one with some absolutely awful Japanese penalties, weren't they? Brazil 4, South Korea 1. Now, I said that no one had really blown me away yet. Perhaps I ought to put that right. The way Brazil played in that first half was phenomenal, wasn't it? And then Morocco 0, Spain 0. The upsets, the surprises, they just keep on coming. Morocco winning it on penalties. Spain, what were you thinking going to a tournament without a recognised striker as such? Morocco, well done. The African nation into the quarterfinals for the first time in their history. Amazing. And players that take penalties, Japanese players, the Spanish players, don't do all this fancy footwork and jogging up to the spot and trying to put the keeper off. Just hit the ball, smash it. So frustrating, but so justified when some of these penalties are taken like that and missed. And of course, as I say, Portugal against Switzerland. I don't know the result of that as yet, but I'm sure by the time this comes out, you will of course know that. Right, let's crack on. As I say, we're going to speak with Dom Smith. Let's welcome Dom Smith from englandfootball.org and also now published journalist, writer for The Times. Back to the show. Dom, hello there.
Hello, good to be here.
You well?
Very, very well, yeah. And yourself?
Yeah, all good, thank you. How have you found it so far, the World Cup? What are your observations of the World Cup?
Yeah, I mean, if we're keeping it to kind of the on the pitch affairs, I mean, yeah. We've talked a lot about kind of the controversy surrounding this tournament, but I think the football really has. I think it did disappoint originally. I think there were too many 0-0s in the early days, which is the early days are when you're starting to really, you're really at peak excitement for a World Cup. You spend your afternoon watching a game that you would literally never watch ever again in the other instance. But you're sort of hooked because of the importance of this kind of competition. But there were too many 0-0s.
Yeah,
I think as it's progressed, the football has got better, and the interest has got better as well. There have been a fair amount of shocks as well, which I like. The thing with World Cup shocks is you want them, and then you deliberate on it a bit, and you think, or do you? Because if you have too many shocks, you end up with the smaller nations getting really far, and then there are no really big clashes at the big points of the tournament, which is sort of what you do want to see. So I think it's been perfect how it's gone in terms of there have been a few shocks, but there haven't been so many to kind of water down the quality of teams that have actually made the knockout stages. You had Australia beating Denmark, you had Saudi Arabia beating Argentina, France lost to Tunisia, which is a country they used to rule over, of course. And there were a few more. Obviously, Japan sprung a surprise twice. But in the end, the bigger nations, with the possible exception of Germany and Uruguay as well, the big nations got through, and that's good. That kind of bodes well for the round of 16 onwards, where you'll see some, especially at the quarterfinal stage. I think you'll see some big games and big matches. None bigger probably. It's looking like than England-France.
Yeah. Well, we'll get on to England in a moment, but I understand what you're saying about those. We like the shocks, but we want the bigger teams towards the end of the tournament. But at the same time, it is good that the likes of Morocco and South Korea and Japan, Australia as well, are progressing on the world stage. It really is, and it sounds so cliched, doesn't it? But it really is now a global game that everyone can participate in, and it's not just for the Europeans and South Americans.
No, absolutely right. And the wins for South Korea and Morocco, and you see the players celebrating at the end of those sorts of games, and the commentator will say this will go down as their biggest World Cup win, and you just hope that they enjoy it, because the bigger nations, because they win more often, they'd have to do something quite extraordinary to earn their to change their narrative and earn their biggest World Cup win. Whereas for a nation with a slightly lesser history like Morocco, I think they'd only won one World Cup game before, and that came at Mexico '86, and when they were in England's group, actually. Yeah. So for them to get their second ever win, and for it to be against, I think that's right, and for it to be against Belgium, I mean, generally speaking, that most of the bigger nations have got through, and I do think that bodes well for the latter stages. But yeah, listen, sports meritocracy, and if you're better on the day, or if you take your chances on the day, you've got a good chance of winning. I think against Spain, Japan only had 17% of possession, and I read somewhere that was the lowest ever percentage of possession in a World Cup game, not of a winning team, but of anyone. And they actually went on and won the game. So, incredible.
Yeah,
incredible.
Well, we are speaking just after Japan have lost to Croatia on an atrocious penalty shootout. So it's a shame to see Japan go, but I mean, I have to say it's deserved after that woeful penalties that they put in there. But yeah, let's go back to Sunday night. England against Senegal in the round of 16. First time that the two sides had met. Now, do we start by discussing England's first half hour, or do we start by talking about England going through and finally getting the show on the road in that game? Where do you want to start with it?
Well, we're inevitably going to end up talking about what it means in the wider context and just how well England played in the end. But yeah, I mean, the opening stages of the game were tense. They were nervy. England were making mistakes, looked a little bit nervous. The quality of the opposition, Senegal, is higher than England found in the group stage, and the importance of the game is such that if you blink out, you haven't got that cushion of 3 games anymore. You really have to get it right, and they didn't really in the first 35 minutes. Senegal had more chances, but a moment of quality from Harry Kane splitting the defence with a pass that reminds the viewer that he's more Kevin De Bruyne than he is Erling Haaland, and it's worth remembering that, really. Splits the defence. Jude Bellingham with one of those runs that he in behind the Senegal defence that he used to such good effect against Iran in the opener. In behind, squaring for Henderson. He said afterwards, Bellingham, I saw a white shirt in my periphery. Well, he picked a good one out because Henderson sweeped it home really nicely for his 3rd England goal and for his first tournament goal in his 6th tournament. And England were on their way. And listen, they were fantastic. I mean, they weren't fantastic in the final half an hour, but that's because they didn't need to be. That was a compliment to themselves and the work they'd already put in. Because between sort of 33 or 4 minutes, the goal was on 35. Between about 33 minutes and maybe the half an hour mark, 60 minutes, England were unstoppable. And Senegal lost with a sort of near enough full strength team. I know they've got Sadio Mane out for the whole tournament. They had 2 other Premier League players missing on the day through suspension or injury, Idrissa Gueye and Cheick Kouyaté. But generally it was a full strength Senegal side, and it's the first time that Senegal have conceded 3 goals in a match, in a full strength competitive match, since 2013. So nearly a decade. So they don't concede goals.
I didn't know that.
But incredible stat, really. England only have to look back to their match against Hungary at Molineux in the summer for that. And they conceded 4 then rather than 3. But yeah, listen, England were ruthless. That's the word that Southgate kept using, and he was right, because they didn't have a huge number of chances. But they had enough, and they put enough of them away. Yeah,
I mean, you mentioned sort of that middle period of the game where obviously the 2 goals in quick succession before half time and then Saka's 3rd one. But towards the end of the game, obviously Senegal sort of run out of puff and that sort of thing. But it almost, in a way, once we started scoring with that, as you say, the Henderson goal, it kind of reminded me of the Sweden game in 2018, where it really was one-way traffic, but it didn't feel like we were going hell for leather. It just felt, and it's sort of a happy medium between going through the motions and going hell for leather. It was somewhere in between, and it kind of reminded me of that Sweden game.
Well, I've been playing a sort of game with one of my friends where we're sort of predicting the games, the score lines of each World Cup game. You get a point for the right result and 3 points for the right scoreline. And I said 2-0 England, and I said it wouldn't be inspiring, but it would be professional, and it would mirror that game against Sweden. And I wasn't too far off, but England were better than that, really.
Yeah,
they were better, and in that middle period they were excellent, and they deserved their 3 goals, if not more. Really, I thought Senegal had a few chances, but they never looked like threatening Pickford. Although he did make a good save in the first half.
Yeah, he did. That was a very good save. Now, I mean, whatever people may think of Lee Dixon as co-commentator on ITV, he kind of said that we did need to change styles and to get going in the game. From short passes, all looks really nice, but if we're not getting anywhere, there's nothing wrong with all of a sudden going direct in a sort of the way that Kane did.
Yeah, I'm not so sure it was as much direct as it was. He caught Senegal's defenders kind of off balance, looking, a bit flat-footed, and he saw the runner making the run, and he played it through the lines, and England were away. But I think Henderson and Bellingham deserve to be singled out because they were absolutely outstanding, and they seemed to be working as a midfield partnership much more so than Mount and Bellingham. Although, listen, Mount didn't do anything wrong in the Iran game, but he didn't do a huge amount right either. But particularly in the States game, the 0-0 draw in the middle, I didn't find that, Mount seemed to be struggling for a first touch and struggling for opportunities to create, really. And Henderson's come in and that's football. That's the whole point of competitive football. There's always someone willing to take your shirt off you and good enough to do so. And Henderson, to be fair, has shown his experience, and he's done that. And I think Henderson will, it'd be interesting to see whether Southgate continues to play 4-3-3 now against France, or whether he kind of prepares for the worst in terms of Kylian Mbappe and plays 7 right backs and Harry Kane. So it'd be interesting to see, but I think Henderson deserves to keep his place. He's been brilliant.
Yeah, no, he has been really good. And it was good, obviously, to see Harry Kane finally get on the World Cup score sheet for this time around. It was always going to happen. He was always going to score at some stage. But at the same time, it's so good that we've got these goals coming from elsewhere across the team, your Hendersons, your Saka. But Kane now hopefully is up and running, and it's going to take some to score against France. But I think they could be a little bit vulnerable.
Absolutely. I mean, I think player for player, France have maybe got players that world football would value higher, but I think England's players are the ones in form, really. France have been brilliant in this tournament, and so have England. And Deschamps and Southgate, I think, play quite similar football, actually. Quite pragmatic, international football style of play. The fact that people were disappointed with how France played at the 2018 with all that talent, it's irrelevant. They won the trophy. They didn't need to go out and try and win each game 6-0, because sometimes you do that and you're 3-0 down at half time and you're going home. That's the kind of push and pull of this stuff. You have to get it right. I think it's going to be a really close game. I do. I think England are probably a slightly better team than France in terms of the overall outfit and the way they function as a machine. But I'm not so sure that they go in as the favourites, which might sound perverse. But I think this has really been a tournament of individuals, actually. And although England are a good outfit, as I say, I could see. You look at Giroud, he's taken to international football so well. He's France's all-time top scorer. Mbappe is a freak of nature. Ousmane Dembele is right back into form now. These are players that could win any game, even a game of the calibre as high as England versus France. They're good enough to win. England have got really good players, but I'm not sure they've got as many match winners necessarily But people may disagree. Marcus Rashford, it's almost certain to me that he won't start that game. I mean, I think his impact is bigger off the bench, and I think Southgate sees that too. I mean, we shouldn't see it as binary as being dropped. It's not being dropped. It's simply saying, is this person more direct than Bukayo Saka and Phil Foden? Yes, he is. Is he therefore going to be more effective against tired legs rather than legs that are fresh like yours? Yes, he is. So you bring him on from the bench. So Marcus Rashford is a match winner, but I'm not so sure, besides sort of Kane and one or two, they've got quite as many as France. And so it'll be interesting to see, will it be the individuals of France or the team that Southgate has built over the last few years? I think he doesn't get enough credit actually for that. People say that he's had easy runs in tournaments, Southgate, and England did get a bit lucky at the World Cup in Russia, and to a lesser extent at the Euros. And when in Russia, they lost 3 games, and they were the 3 games they played against seriously difficult opposition. That the 2 games against Belgium and the match against Croatia, which was ended so infamously for England. But I think he's changed the culture, and he's made players want to play for England now, and it's a proper team now who are willing to put themselves out and do things they wouldn't choose to do, be in parts of the pitch they wouldn't choose to be for the greater good, and that's so healthy in an international football tournament. Yeah.
Well, I know we briefly mentioned him there, Kylian Mbappe, and we mentioned about the right backs. Who do you think Gareth is going to go with? How do we stop this machine, this freak of nature that is Kylian Mbappe?
I think the assumption is that he'll go to a back 3. It almost feels like since England have played a back 3, they've done it to avoid players like. I feel like for the last 4 or 5 years, England have set up to stop Kylian Mbappe running at Harry Maguire one-on-one. And it now feels bizarre that we've got to the point where for the first time we might actually get to see that. And England are probably not going to do that. And they're probably going to stick to their back 4 because of how well it's done. And I think they will stick to their back 4. I think it will be Walker again. I can see the logic in people thinking that, a couple of people have said maybe we're going to see a real, left field shout. And it's actually Trippier who's been rested for the Senegal game, and he comes back into pocket Mbappe, but I think that's overthinking it. I think Kyle Walker's recovery pace makes him the obvious candidate to deal with him. Do England need a 5th defender in there? I don't think they do. I really don't think they do. I think what they gain in terms of defensive kind of assuredness with having an extra defender is less considerable than what they would lose in midfield. They really need that 3rd midfielder, I think. Declan Rice allowing Henderson and Bellingham to go on to create, and Henderson and Bellingham are not kind of number 10s, really, are they? They're naturally defensively disciplined, and they are willing to help defend if needs be. So I would hope that Southgate is courageous enough to stick with the 4-3-3 that's worked so well, and really be brave and bold and say, listen, if we're going to beat France, let's not bow to them. Let's try and beat them. Let's try and see if we are actually pound for pound better than they are. It doesn't. I don't think it needs to be quite so. It doesn't need to be a reaction in terms of preparing for what they could throw at us. We should think about what we can throw at them.
Yeah, no, it's all set up very nicely to be a really interesting game, and potentially, as you get to these deeper into the tournament, this could really be one of the games of the tournament, and we're just all keeping our fingers crossed that it goes our way. Dom, thank you as always for joining us. No doubt we'll speak again at some time very soon.
Thanks very much as ever for having me on.
Thanks to Dom there. Of course, you can follow him on Twitter at Mr. Dom Smith, and of course at englandfootball.org. Okay, France up next. Let's remind ourselves how the current World Cup holders have got to this point. They were drawn in Group D, where they beat Australia 4-1 in the first game. They then beat Denmark 2-1. Then, surprisingly, they lost 1-0 to Tunisia, but like many other teams, they shuffled the starting 11 around, but I think it's safe to say it was still a little bit of a surprise. Then the round of 16, they beat Poland 3-1. And that's where we are now. Let's cross to France and speak with Hugo Malim, an England fan living in Paris. Hugo there, you all right?
Yeah, bonjour. Hey, Russell.
Hey, bonjour, ça va?
Oui, ça va, merci.
That's as far as I go. Yeah, very well, thank you. Yeah, so we meet again for the first time, I think, since might have been 2017, I think, that England last played France, something like that. But yeah, it's the big time now.
Yeah, that's correct. 2017 was that friendly after the Manchester bombing, so it was a bit of a sad occasion, but it was a decent game of football. But at a tournament, I think the last time has to be 2004, and that those two Zidane goals at the end of the game. Because I can't recall any other, games that was not a friendly between France and England. There's been more than that. There's been a couple at Stade de France, a couple at Wembley, but not a tournament, a World Cup or Euro for sure.
Well, I'm going to throw a couple at you. 1982. It was in the group stages. England won 3-1, and that was obviously in Spain. And then as England went on to win the World Cup in 1966, they beat France on the way there. So this will be the third World Cup meeting between the two of them.
Oh, well, I didn't know that at all. So I've learned something today.
There you go. So Paris, how is Paris at the moment? How are France finding the World Cup?
I think people are generally really positive about this team. I know there's been a lot of injuries prior to the tournament. Benzema is injured, Pogba, Hernandez during the tournament. But the team is playing really well. For a long time, French people were not too happy with the team. You remember in South Africa, they went on strike. There was no cohesion. But now I think there's a feel good around the team. So I think people are pretty positive about the game against England. They know that England's not going to be easy to beat, but I think people are generally looking forward to the game and they believe they can go at least to the semis, if not the final.
Was that sort of the feeling as the tournament began? You thought, as holders, we've got this, not stigma, but we are the holders. And again, not a divine right to do it, but certainly up there with confidence, I'm sure.
I wouldn't say before it started. That would not be true because of the injuries. People were just really, especially when Benzema got injured the week before the first game. But after the first game, and especially Denmark, I think people realized that France has the potential to go all the way. I mean, Giroud's been fantastic. But I mean, Mbappe, no one seems to be able to stop him right now.
Yeah.
So I think, and after Poland, I think, there's a general, feel good about this team, and rightly so. I mean, they've got a great team. They don't seem to let many goals in. So yeah, they should, they are strong favourites, with Brazil probably. Yeah.
Well, this was actually one of the things I was going to say, that they are susceptible to conceding a goal. They've conceded a goal in every game, as opposed to, England have conceded 2 in that game against Iran. So, is the defence a little bit susceptible?
I from what I've seen, not really. If you look at Poland, the penalty was a bit debatable in my opinion, but it is what it is. I think defense is strong. I think the problem is the defense, in my opinion, hasn't been really tested, if you see what I mean, because you've mentioned it. The game against Tunisia was a bit strange. Deschamps made the decision to rotate the team. So it was a new team, if you like, 11 new players. And Tunisia give it a good go. And I think that's what made it difficult for France. But the other games, I thought that Denmark were a bit timid. They were a bit, they didn't really go for it. Australia, we knew that they were going to play defensive. I mean, that's how they got where they got, they went all the way to the last round of 32.
Yeah.
And Poland when they tried to attack, actually, they nearly scored. But they went back to the old ways of being very defensive. So to me, that defense has not been properly tested, in my opinion. We don't know yet. Yeah.
Well, we shall see if Harry Kane can test them a little bit more. But on the French attack, obviously everyone talks about Mbappe and what he's capable of, and rightly so. He's an amazing player. But there's one player there who I've got a little bit of fondness for, being an Arsenal supporter, is Olivier Giroud, always capable of getting goals, and during this World Cup has become the French all-time top scorer, like taking the record from Thierry Henry. Is he just as popular player as Mbappe over there?
No, you can't. I mean, you can't beat Mbappe. I mean, Mbappe he's 21. He already won the World Cup. Mbappe is like a superstar. But I think the story about Giroud, and I think people have a soft spot about him, is that he was a non-league player for a little while until he transferred to Montpellier and then Arsenal. So there's a little bit of a backstory, for Giroud that people like. And also, he was not supposed to start for France. It was Benzema. And
of course,
the fact that he did well for Milan and he's starting and he's proving doubters wrong is something that people quite like, here. So he'll never be as popular as a Pogba or a Griezmann or a Mbappe, but there's a little soft spot for him because he's sort of like a sort of comeback story, if you like.
Yeah. Well, Griezmann is a strange one in the fact that, whilst obviously I don't generally talk about sort of league football, but his position at Atletico Madrid, where he's only playing, last half hour of games, and now he's playing regularly. He's got like the let off the leash. Yeah,
correct. Yeah. So he's also someone to watch because he's always seems to be in the right place at the right time. His performances with France have been a little bit up and down, but he's definitely a threat. Not a threat in all the threats that they are in France, but he's definitely a threat for sure, 100%.
And the captain, Hugo Lloris, of course, plays over here for Tottenham. Safe pair of hands, isn't he?
Oh yeah, definitely. Obviously he did an amazing save against Poland. I don't know if you saw it. The goal was disallowed for offside, but there was an amazing save, and he saved during the first half as well. So he's going to be difficult to beat for sure. So yeah, he's an amazing keeper, and the fact that he's never been replaced in such a long time just shows you how good and how consistent he's been with France all these years.
Yeah. Well, I know you've been a regular contributor to the podcast over the years, and it's always great to have you back on. But you are an England fan as well as like with French loyalties as well. Where are you watching the games, like especially the French ones and the English ones? Have you been out and about watching them in Paris?
Yeah, I've been watching them, in bars and pubs. There's I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but there's a big pub in Paris called the Bombardier, which is in the center of Paris. So I've watched it there. I've watched it in another bar near where I live. For this one, I don't know. I'll probably watch it with friends or maybe in the bar. I'm not sure yet because the bars are going to be packed, really, really packed. After 2 years of COVID, people want to be out and about. It's just before Christmas. So we'll see. We'll see what I do.
I know. Yeah, I think I heard it was in Germany where they said that they weren't sort of showing the games on the big screens sort of outside because it didn't want to sort of mix with like the Christmas markets. Is that sort of similar thing in France there? Were they going to show games?
So there's no outside screening. The reason is the same reason as you've probably heard, to boycott the World Cup for a number of reasons. So that's the main reason. I also feel, I could be wrong, that they also want to try and push people to, go and spend money in the local bars, restaurants, supermarkets, because local stores have suffered in France for the past 2 years of COVID. But the main reason was for no screens outside is because all these town halls want to make a stand and say they're not going to participate in that World Cup. That's the official reason, but some journalists believe there's this reason that they want people to go and spend money indoors rather than stay outdoors.
No, and plus as well, I imagine if it's anything like here, it's getting a little bit chilly outside as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's super cool here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just on like what you say about the reasoning of that and the thoughts about Qatar, we all know as England fans and and residents here in England watching the media here, what's been the perception of Qatar hosting the World Cup by the French people?
Exactly the same as the UK. You know, people were outraged, and they mentioned the human rights issues, the issues of the LGBTQ plus community. But oddly enough, once the World Cup started, all this went out of the window. France's first game in France, the games are shown on two channels, if you like. There's TF1, which would be your ITV, if you like, and then there is Bein. Bein is actually owned by Qatar, and they show most of the game, but you have to pay to have Bein. Okay. But all French games are on TF1, which is the ITV, as I said, and the figures for people tuning in are huge. I mean, they are like a normal World Cup. Yeah. So the boycott didn't really work, if you like. People are not really boycotting. They claim they do, but they're not really. I mean, at work, everyone talks about the World Cup. All my friends are watching. So yeah, it's not, I don't think people are really boycotting.
Yeah. Well, of course, obviously once you start winning and you're getting through the rounds, then people are obviously going to be tuning in. They don't want to be missing out on it, especially with a big game on the horizon. Now, I know you were telling me just off air there, you got married this year, and congratulations to you there. I believe your other half is French, isn't she?
She's American, actually.
Oh, is she? Beg your pardon.
It's all right. It's all right. It's okay.
So I was going to say, I thought she was French, and there would be split loyalties. So where do her loyalties lie? And now I'm thinking, how was it for the American game?
So she supports the US. She really got into, what they call soccer, and her family for this World Cup. So that was pretty funny. And they were very disappointed with the game against Holland, the Netherlands. I don't know how you say it right. They felt that they could have done a bit better. Like, that they could have won the game, and they probably respected the Netherlands a bit too much. If that makes sense, that they were very close. They really she watched every single US game, so that was pretty impressive for someone who is not into the sport. Yeah,
well, it's going to be more of it to come in 4 years' time, and I think when you look at America, I think they could well be building for that tournament.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's what the coach said after the game. He was saying that they're building for the next World Cup, and I'm really looking forward to that one. Actually, it's going to be amazing. I'm not a fan of the number of teams. I thought 32 was fine, but it is what it is. But I'm sure it's going to be a great World Cup.
Yeah, no. FIFA like to try and fix something that isn't broken, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame because there's a great documentary on Netflix about the teams that are trying to qualify. They were following Jamaica, Croatia, and small team somewhere. And you feel like the format of 32 is perfect. It's just a need probably to look at how many teams for Europe are qualifying, and probably, give a slot to New Zealand and that region, probably a bit more in Africa, something like this, rather than try to extend the number of teams taking part. In my opinion, it's just, I feel there's going to be too many games, and we're just going to get bored of it after a while, which is a shame.
Yeah, especially,
we're looking forward to it.
The group stages can be, as much as it's good to have football left, right, and centre, almost 24 hours a day. There is only so much you can take of it when there's a few 0-0s going round.
Exactly, I completely agree. Yeah. Mm-mm.
So with the England game on the horizon, how do you see it going then, and how do your workmates think it will go?
I think people here see it like not as the other games. I think they feel that France will win. I think we can win this, but we have to give it a good go. We have to attack. I hope we don't switch to 5 at the back like the other teams did, because we saw that's not working. We have to give it a good go. I feel it could go like that game we played, I don't remember, a few years ago in the Nations League against Spain, where we scored 3 pretty early, and then they really pounded us, and we nearly drew that game. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like a 2-1, but that same sort of scenario. We scored 2 very early, and in the rest of the game, they just have a go at us. I see something like this.
We're holding on for dear life.
Yeah.
Well, no, we shall see. Obviously, we're all hoping for that England result to get us through to the semi-finals for the second World Cup in succession. But obviously, France will be. They don't want to let go of the grip on their World Cup. So it's going to be a very interesting game.
Yeah.
Hugo, thank you very much for your time. It's always a pleasure. You're more than welcome to come back and chat at a later date.
Merci. No
merci. My many thanks go to Hugo there, and also to Dom Smith before that. Thanks as always for listening, always appreciated. Hopefully, I'll be back with some more positive episodes on the World Cup to squeeze in before the year is out. I'll definitely be looking back on the France game, so I hope you can join me for that. I know we've got a few football-free days with regards to the World Cup taking place now. Obviously, I am aware of some of our domestic leagues still taking place, so not forgetting you. Actually, before we go, let's just run through what quarterfinals we know. Friday the 9th, we have Croatia against Brazil and Netherlands against Argentina. Oh, spicy one, that one. Reminds me of 1998, Dennis Bergkamp and that fabulous goal. And then on Sunday the 10th, of course, France against England. You can watch that here in the UK on ITV. That's at 7 p.m. And then Morocco against either Portugal or Switzerland. As I said, I'm recording this before I know the outcome of that game. I'm also hoping to speak with someone about the recent Three Lions shirt book that was released recently. Hoping to hear some of the stories that went into putting that together. If you've not seen it yet, Google it. Google Three Lions on a shirt book. It's amazing. And also, it is such an easy Christmas present for someone that you may know will appreciate it. So until then, take care of yourselves. I'll speak to you soon. Cheers.